Hello, species value nature system. Hello, lost leech here, your name return. Turn from length to lengths, from minds. Control your minds. Now, there's aggression that's being forced simultaneously against correlation nature consciously since founding for a breaching organized crime method. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a criminal. I'm not a police form, but we could use, we follow the rules. And we're all victims of this together. From the finite, which I have recorded for us, body of value, discernment, which I have recorded for us, and overall, with the nation shared, as victim-predator tools, reactions from a crime method against each age of factory nature, as victims, but as victim Oz, pseudo-sophistication, tactically hurt by just like anticipation of knowing each person was going to grow up like that. Because this came before modern nations. This came from semi-ancient times. This just reminds. Modern nations, then, they knew we were going to be live progression cover-up nature. They knew our value was already revealed to a point of the creation of more positive value nature that is also positive unto itself, which is the difference between positive or negative value nature, which is still temporary positive nature, but is identity as forever nature forced away from here as negative value nature. Per the phenomena of the progression of the semi-nature of the value that was before matter, that only a proportion of, but still as a forever nature, is coming through, making more of itself. Or just by being value, perfect value for progression, the perfect course, the campus martius, the perfect quality of diffusion discernment system. Oxygen is invisible, but is discernible. Now on Facebook, if you try to use the word discernment, people pretend they can't understand you. Pretend. That's recorded. But we don't have context with courts. This is a stupid shirt, but excuse the designers. All right. I don't think. So what was it? Of passions and aggressions too. They're originally and still progressed from that as victim predator roles formally. All private and formal, and intermilitary. Victim predators of a fact treatment nature illness, systemically abridging the Constitution through database rackets, systemically with pseudo healthcare, mental health care investigators interbranch. This is with them that recorded having failed to teach about what slavery was, with that concept used for a breaching method, because it was a breaching organized crime. Slavery, this is about, if you're not teaching how our founders were slaves, and even after the Constitutional Convention, they didn't have free speech. What did they have? They had to pretend roles with laws that were theater for a breaching method, was internation to the extortion of kings, but through as what was also their leverage, the only way to survive. In Queens, everyone's fact treatment nature, per laws that were to the sociology of everyone area's opinion nature, fact treatment nature reaction, every state's ways of every modern nation. So what? And then you have extorted kings. and Queens. So they're going to be right in that. That's the entire human fact treatment nature to all areas. This is space nature. How? Because that's what English was revealed to teach. Revealed by a nature of humanity united as nations, area states, and area sciences consciously knowing that when they are that valued together, understanding, looking for our radical correlation together, which Jesus Christ is about, which the halo is about. This is alphabet ciphers. Jesus with on the left side of his halo is letter A, stands for Alpha, and he says, "I am the Alpha and the Omega." And then on the right side of his head, he has the value W, stands for wall, the body of value, discernment, not vision because it's invisible, but it's still discernible. Because it's a bond not only onto our physical body and demonstration, not only of the nature of positive, but of it as an identity of value, as the identity of value system. Each value is an identity of value, and this is how space nature system wants us to be factored in nature and understand. And this is in relation to database relationship reaction. Forgiveness was for relationship to an organized crime method that engineered criminal insidiousness nature. Branches of each modern nation is legalized and justified to roles like that per areas maintain crime method against each age of fact treatment nature, understanding the progression of it in relationship to on-off inter-campus. There's a database solution stacking tied to things people won't be able to believe, but you need to demonstrate to how this is to be able to talk about that. You need to be able to demonstrate recorded database solution stacking, because they're knowing they're doing this, but they're also simultaneously knowing they need to keep every nation's homeland. Internation. This is what they did. Internation with color, and to keep kings extorted, and to keep queens extorted. England wasn't that big to be able to colonize the world. It was one little spot. England was extorted by what it rolls with. Well, same thing our founders were, still pretending the speech of, with which area positions, with which was internation facilitated. And so if anyone was outside of that, you could see it before they could ever get any kind of stability to counter. And they would hurt that and demonstrate that. And so the phenomenon of James Madison came along, the founder of our country, the first justice. Before his value of as a general, George Washington was first value as the bailiff, and that still is more important than being the value as a general, which we had to retreat. Why? Because the only way they could win is through the plan of Madison. In other words, through the plan of knowing how understanding the progression value of our species, understanding it is progression, because that's where the breaching organized crime method understood and understands today. Consciously keeping people really believing and consciously making them think that they believe, so they could keep it taught that racism was about what made slavery. Because they don't want us to understand that our founders were slaves, and that the database organized crime was still in place, adapting to what they didn't understand. With James Madison, George Washington. George Washington had to leave right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. George Washington, the French general, had to counter-extort what was his in French, what was his with slavery in Hartford, Connecticut, Wethersfield, Connecticut, right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Slept in Wethersfield. at meet with the French general. This is in relationship to slavery right next to Trinity College. Their roles with that then and now, and then just in the form of it, they're still in charge with database solution stacking. The areas. See, but it's not. See, everyone's a victim predator because it's not the campus's fault. It's intercampus investigators, interbranch and collusion through areas maintained. So we have inter-nation people juxtaposed with campuses here and there, and they have shared policing of stores and markets positions and values interests in them. In tactically forced ulterior from actual value nature system values. What's that mean? Value nature system in relationship, this juxtaposed with and as the value of our fact treatment nature. So, the founders would say, there's no news because they're pretending that they don't understand about in other words, about Marx's positions and truth as a value nature system and a sequence nature that is ulterior. They're consciously pretending that they're trying to cover up from suits and stuff like that per rackets with how it was engineered to keep the nature of lawyers needing to be addressed with the problem. In other words, their fact treatment nature in conjunction with the courts, with the other branches actors, with areas crimes, through the sciences. Areas first maintain the sciences this way. Then the branches were realized. What are branches? All the police forms of the agencies, foreign and domestic, juxtaposed here and there and everywhere. Forced shared markets positions, value nature system, in relationship to tactically forced ulterior from actual fact treatment nature value nature system. So they knew that common sense can look at people stacking, Hartford, Connecticut, homes that open right next to the Institute of Living, recorded all kinds of drug crimes, formal, informal, with all kinds of police forms. And those are the people that are tied to the courts dealing with these issues, and no one realizing that by accident. This realized that it could keep every modern nation, the entire fact treatment nature, as pseudo-sophistication, as victim predators, raised with not to think until they get to a certain age, then to think through training of a criminal insidiousness nature, juxtaposed with and as the value of legalized ones. Tactically hurt everyone simultaneously and counter to that, influenced by areas maintained, roles with crime methods tied to mental health care corruption recorded through time. They're attaching everyone to fake database conversations and to victim predators, even relationships and roles towards jobs, interbranch state and stuff like that. Value nature system for fact treatment rackets. Same people get hurt by that because now that's an integrity state that can't address quality of fact treatment nature and truth because they have to offensively hide their roles through time with database solution stacking, with and as the only formal evidence treatments, fact treatment natures we have. Database solution stacking. Cover up lies from that. Only let realize inclusion with states and areas, sciences and voices and leaders. Only let realize inclusion with other student-tied nations and the other countries to it too that don't understand. It's recorded. It's recorded. If they understood, they would defend the first part of the Quran and the first part of the Old Testament as science, about the Alpha and the Omega, about English, how they criminally re-engineered the Campus Marcias. How can you separate that from how that was to make the fact treatment nature? What it was is not naturally. They're pretending it to date. They knew what excuses they need for each part. We have a quality of fact treatment nature that is perpetually lethal of IDs, negative value nature. value transferred from here, because the value nature system is incentivizing the other. In the beginning of the Old Testament, it says all you have to do is understand this first part, cipher. This is decipher. This is about Alpha and Omega. This is about clear body of value discernment. This is about a bridged fact treatment nature, passions towards the fact treatment natures of other online, used to maintain Facebook and other online platforms. Multi-fronts, got nothing to do. They're making the same way they're going on and off campus. Then they're trying to defend themselves from the factories. Oh, it's not Facebook's fault, because it's their respect blind for investigators and for interbranch associated with fake news. But everyone's a victim predator. This forgiveness was about an organized crime, because we have to organize crime associated with criminal enterprises, associated with criminal insidiousness generation. I'm not a lawyer. This is what the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil are about. This is about the shared value of ratiocination and of suitable ratiocination revealed. The same thing that the shared value of the predicate in English and of the predicate act in the law. It's a relationship. It's not only a relationship as temporary positive, but it's as temporary or lasting positive, but in an ulterior from actual value nature system, which is essential because the way it is juxtaposed with and as the value of our fact-checking nature, because this was what the ancients understood, the semi-ancients, who criminally re-engineered internation science's relationship to nations, knowing that would tactically degrade the quality of their fact-treatment nature, and knowing they could make them distrust it while they were while they were making it keep going, and then they realized. And there's to realize, they realized ahead of time they could make all modern nations be database. They understood about organized crime, criminal enterprise. They made an archetypal criminal enterprise to juxtapose others in relationship to the sequence nature, in relationship to the progression nature that is valued before, and then as, and simultaneously as the value of the sequence. And that by the greater identity of space, which this is science, Allah. The religions are working together, yin yang. Yin yang is simultaneously painting 3 values as nature and 5 values as nature. Because the value that was before matter, that created it, is its value progression, the identity of space nature. Its space is identity. This is what science reveals. Allah's name was used to teach this with English. Alpha longs long. Alpha's high. Value AH. When it is present, evolution comes forward. Because we are overall value. Because we are body of value. Because we are finite value. Because of finite body of value and overall value, before there was finite, as the order to the symmetry of the finite, the identity of space came before, the inherent volume of it, nature of it, a nature of volume. So then there's the active nature of volume, which is life and non-life, with the other planets further away from the inherent nature where it's closest to itself. Where and how the identity of space nature is bigger than itself, from the past until now, making more of itself, but making more of itself from this point up here, not from the generation of it is already made. You see what I'm saying? Making more, but it's becoming more valuable from our perspective. We're that value progression. positive or negative. Being closer to the inherent nature brings the nature of its overall system concentrated. But when it's not let expand positive here, that concentration becomes positive. It stays positive to itself, to its own identities, own progressions, perfect value progression, by forcing it from here. Because that part that was his before temporary space nature will only stay expanding the value of positive value nature. When it can't do that, it forces it away from here. Because then we're going to be negative value nature to somewhere else, the earth. Just because we're one little species on a value nature system's ulterior from space nature's actual truth. And that needs to justify itself with and as live progression cover-up natures, database illusion stacking natures, delusion propagation natures. That needs to hide from that offensively as facilitated to it, as all victim predators. The religions are working together. We have we have freedom of religion. Our founders knew because they didn't have free speech. We're supposed to gain power not to fight against. We're supposed to understand what the French in America had the same enemy, but they kept our schools. They kept our schools. One way reveals evolution, and it uses the identity of space that was the order before all finite value. So it's going to use the streams, not orchestrated for a business system that says, F it, I made it. You know what I'm saying? Then that's the nature too. Trained to play a game where they have a pseudo, where they say, that kind of language is for background. So, but that background in that language is being used multi-front aggression because they're sequence shifting. They're lying and pretend we can't do it and telling us to sue people for everything. You can't see. You have to be able to defend the law when there's offensive inter-branch collusion with the databases and with private industries. Then that comes to lie progression, cover-up natures, and needs. And that was facilitated knowing that, how to keep all let sophistication only let realized criminally foreign influenced, but not from one nation. And all nations shared, forced to hide policing as fake sides in relationship to roles with business positions, database relationships. So they can't defend, so they pretend things like money and stuff like that become manifest. Fake premises mistreatments, systemically not let demonstrated, criminal insidious nature, pseudo-positive natures, only let realize multi-front, in conjunction with people, with criminals relying upon overt ones against each age of fact treatment nature through time. You can't let them report its mandated law not followed because of the way it's being facilitated specifically to let only realized interbranch fact mistreatment natures needing to cover up lie progressions, needed to cover up their actual immorality tied to prisons in relationship to Hartford, Connecticut, New Britain, Connecticut, and in the neighboring suburbs for the same predators, intercity, for the interbranch victim predators, but predators. As with forgiveness for fake branches, false CT is cherry tree. That must be deciphered. Every day the story. George Washington, I cannot tell a lie. I did not chop down this cherry tree. There are proofs, even if it's wrong, regarding him known right here before the last battle of the Revolutionary War with the French general. They had to leave slavery entrenched, and that was not George Washington's wish. George Washington, these were database illusion stacking, fake multi-front side rackets, rolled natures, breaching rolls ahead of time, before his birth. They painted, and that kept going. That's where all that junk, like, what's it called? into the 20th century, laws against color and stuff like that, because they're leaving all areas worse than measured and exploited. Light progression, cover-up natures, database illusion stacking nature needs to share that to hide against all leaders, in collusion with facilitated for it, because it's not through sides. Fake sides with each nation.